You're tuning in to Ready, Set, Reset, where our goal is to help listeners reset their outlook by talking more about mental health from different perspectives. We visit with a range of professionals across the field to get their input and insight on what's really going on. Our current series focuses on unraveling and understanding impacts of life transitions. We all go through it, but it's a matter of how we get through it. Just a reminder, this podcast is for educational and motivational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional training or personal therapy. Hello, good people. I'm your host, Ciara O'Neill, licensed professional counselor. If you're listening right now, I hope you did some self-care this week, and if you haven't, get to it after you listen to this episode. Whether that be going for a walk, reading a new book, taking yourself to lunch, or even setting a boundary you've been meaning to set to protect your peace. On today's episode, I have a therapist, behavioral specialist, expert witness featured on TV One's Fatal Attraction, mom, wife, and friend, Elexus Stiff. Say hello, Elexus.
Hello. As Ciara said, my name is Elexus. I am a licensed professional counselor, owner and founder of Healing for the Soul Therapy Services. We are coming up on a year in April, so I'm super excited about that.
Okay, congrats.
Thank you. I work with adolescents, young adults there, and really my focus is intergenerational trauma and interpersonal relationships.
Nice. Okay. Well, Alexis, again, I'm glad to have you. And since I have you here on our second episode of the year, it's 2025.
Yay.
You know, we are pushing into a new year. So how has 2025 been treating you so far?
2025 has actually been pretty good for me so far. I've really been delving into self-care, rest, relaxation, looking at some of my goals, figuring out how I can accomplish those. And I'm here, so I'm super excited about that.
Okay, I hear you. All right. Well, that's all good stuff that we need to kind of keep us going. And I think it's a great thing to get yourself started off, on a good foot with the year. So today we're talking about parenting. So Alexis and I we are both parents. We became parents at different stages in life. And, everybody, when they become parents, it's a different thing, going from being a single, person out there living your life like it's golden or however you're living it to becoming a parent, which is not a terrible thing, which some people look at sometimes of like, oh, my life is over. I'm a parent. I've been living my best life for the last several years with my daughter. So, but the whole transition of going from only thinking about yourself to having to step up and be responsible for a whole nother life. Again, like I said, it's a big transition. And we just want to talk about that a little bit more because I feel like it's something that we don't talk about a lot of the times. And, people just kind of go into it head first, or they don't go into it much at all, and you get different results, right? So just to kind of start things off, Alexis, we just going to start at the beginning and kind of go backwards from becoming a parent. For you, how old were you when you became a parent?
I was actually only 16 years old when I became a parent. It's really funny because if you see me and you see my son, I'm like 5'2", my son's 6'2", and a lot of people are very taken aback when they see us of, whoa, you don't look like you would have a child, that old. And so it's funny. I have to all the time say, hi, I'm a teen mom, had him young. But yeah, my journey started at 16 years old.
Wow. So what was that like for you becoming a mom at 16?
It is a mind shift because, we all know at 16, friends are very important, socializing, parties, all those types of things. Yeah. And once I became a mom, and not only my focus shifted from not worrying about what I'm eating and what I'm wearing, and it focused, and now it shifted to, oh my goodness, like I have to worry about what this person is going to eat. I have to worry about making sure my baby is clothed and he's, good. And so it's a total different mind shift when you're becoming a parent.
Yeah, for sure. So, and you mentioned something so simple that people probably don't think about, and that's going to thinking about what somebody else is eating and what they are wearing. Because it's like, every day, we get up with, as we're single people, and we do that for ourselves, but having to get that whole other person prepared, and not just that whole other person. Sometimes, you got 3 kids, so now that's kind of tripled up, and I know your oldest is a little, is older, and he can, take for himself, but still having to do that and figure that out, it puts a lot more, stress on us to where we have to figure things out a lot more, right?
Yes.
So with that, how would you say that impacted you becoming a mom as a teenager and kind of feeling like things were, disrupted a little bit in that sense of, like you said, 16 years old, we're, in high school, friends, we're just kind of living. We're not thinking about growing up that fast. So tell me how that impacted you, I guess emotionally and, maturity wise as you had to figure that out.
Emotionally, it was a lot because I was a single mom at a very young age. And so that was stressful within itself. Shout out to my support too, because I had a lot of good support. And sometimes that's what parents lack, is that social support, from family, from friends. I had friends step up, family step up. And so that helped me a lot. But maturity wise, it was hard because now I'm not even emotionally mature myself at 16 years old. And now I have to try to teach emotional maturity to a kid, And so it was very hard at first to even learn to regulate my emotions while dealing with the baby crying all the time or, not being able to change his diaper fast enough. And so it was emotionally distressing, but I'm just really thankful for that support.
Support system is so big. On our last episode, our guest Erica, she was talking about like when kids go off to college, having community and a support or a supportive home to help you transition from that. Because even going from high school to college, that transition of not having that support in school. So I'm glad to hear that you had that support that you needed. But when you look back and think about it, maybe even people that you work with now, what would you like? What is it like for someone not to have that emotional support or that support early on, when whether they're a single parent or just a parent in general, like a couple, not to have that support? What have you seen?
I see a lot of parents who don't have that support, it being emotionally distressed a lot of times, not really having time for themselves, not really, understanding emotional regulation. Because if you don't have somebody to say, hey, let me watch the baby for you, or hey, let me make sure that you showered and that you're good mentally. I've seen a lot of my parents just be in a lot of mental distress and be in a state of survival where they don't know how, when they slept, they don't know how many hours they slept. Yeah. They don't know when the last time they ate was.
Yeah. I was there. Even though I had the support, and I had my child during COVID, so the support was there, but it was limited in ways because we were in a time of everybody was scared of getting sick, and of course I didn't want my baby sick. But I think me and my husband both went through a time of like, how many weeks have passed? Where what's happening? What's going on right now? And luckily, I had him to balance that out with. But there were some times to where it does get so overwhelming that it is a lot. In those early stages.
It's interesting to just look at the support I had back then versus the support I have now. Okay. Like even you bringing meals over, texting, making sure I'm good. I think that is needed more because it just lets the parents know, wow, somebody is thinking about me. It's not just focused on the baby. Somebody is concerned about my mental health and my well-being as well.
Yeah. It's the little things like you said. And you made a good point when you talked about, mentioned emotional maturity. And I recently read a book called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. It's a book where it explores these adult people that are living their lives and going through all these things and looking back on how emotionally immature their parents were up until they were, adults, or even still to this day. And I've worked with some clients too where, they talk about, their life was good, right? They had a roof over their head. They probably came up in a wealthy family. Like life was good. But when it got to their parents and the pressure and the things that they took them through, they felt like they should not have anything to complain about. But their parents were so emotionally immature, they had a lot of insecurities. So I see a lot of adults with a lot of insecurities and struggles in their relationships and questioning themselves when they parent because they worry about how their parents were. Just to be transparent, my mom, she was a teen parent. And so growing up, I thought my mom was mean, and there was a lot I didn't understand early on. And I used to be so angry and mad with her because I'm just like, why? The why of things. And I had to think back as I got older of, she was a teen mom. Like, this was just kind of thrown at her, and I couldn't imagine having a kid at 16 or 17 or hell, even 20, because, I just felt like I wasn't emotionally there, but it causes you, it requires you to grow up. And I definitely applaud you and my mom as well for being able to step up and do that because it's not easy. And then we got a lot of kids in foster care and that are adopted out because people aren't ready for that. And no shade at all to people that do take that route if
Mm-hmm.
they feel like their child can have a better home somewhere else because they're not ready. But it does take a parent to be emotionally mature or find that maturity to raise a successful child, and that can include a lot of things. So if anybody's looking for a good read and just want to understand that further, or maybe you're questioning some things in your childhood, go check that book out. Like I said, it's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, and it's by Lindsay Gibson, and I'll put it in the description.
Yes.
So with that, Alexis, you mentioned as far as like kind of the range of like parenting then and now.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say the biggest difference is from parenting at 16 versus parenting at 30 when you had your later children?
I think now I'm way more patient.
Okay.
I struggled with low frustration tolerance then, and I still struggle, now. But I'm more so trying to emotionally nurture my child or children, and make sure their social emotional development is good versus at 16 like I didn't even know what that is. I didn't even know how to do that. And so I think my son says that he's like, you're way more soft on them than you were on me. And I'm like, well, I've learned so much more. So I really try to incorporate like therapy techniques and the things that I've learned into practice with them, like counting down, teaching them coping skills, teaching them how to say I'm mad, I'm sad, and giving them a voice as well.
Making them, teaching them that emotional maturity early on. You instill that early, it's going to go so far.
And I was going to say, like you, I was raised in like a home where I really didn't have a voice or, mental health was not big, back then. And
ignored.
Ignored, and so I really tried to be less authoritative of like, you're going to do this, you're going to say this, you're going to do this, versus being able to give them a voice and allowing them to be assertive. Because, the more I feel like we develop that emotional maturity in our kids, the more they're going to be successful adults, kind of like what the book sounds like it's talking about.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Yeah, and Alexis, I agree. And I 100% respect that and how, you're taking that time and being so intentional, with your kids and parenting. And sometimes, that's all it takes for them to just really understand. So if you think about your years of experience, just kind of in the field, and how long have you been in the field now?
I actually have been in the field for about 10 years now. Ciara actually got me my very first job in the mental health field. We worked with adolescents and families with mental health issues and at-risk youth.
Okay.
And that was a very interesting experience.
It was. And we worked with a lot of parents. So it was a lot of community work, working in the homes, working with parents. And if you think about that experience working with, those at-risk youth and families, and even, kind of in today's time as well, what do you see, out of a lot of parents who come in that have struggles that have not really adapted to, transitioning into parenthood or being a parent?
I see a lot of imbalance. As far as the parents literally just trying to survive. Wow. Like they're working, some of them are going to school, some of them are struggling to put a roof over the child's heads and provide for them. And I feel like when the parent is experiencing a lot of dysfunction, then that oftentimes, I know you've seen that, bleeds onto their parenting ability and how they interact with the child.
Oh yeah, 100%. And sometimes parents don't realize that themselves. Of they I see often how when I meet parents and they're doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm having trouble parenting them, and I'm talking to the parent and they're doing the exact same thing sometimes. I'm hearing the same stuff that they're doing at home, or later on when I start working with the kid a little bit more, I hear that the parent is doing it. And so it's like, how can you expect one thing out of the kid if you're not, the old saying of practicing what you preach, putting that out there. And I try to be really conscious of that, whether it be in parenting and working with my, my youth clients, of putting those things out there and calling myself out. Because again, it's really hard to say, oh yes, follow this guideline, and there's no example out there.
Yeah.
You know, and we figure it out eventually, right? Some people, not everybody. Some people figure it out eventually, but you have some that are not so lucky that don't take the reins on things to figure it out and say, hey, I don't want to be like my parents.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to, you know, parent like, you know, not saying my parents are bad people, but I just want to do things different. You know, I want to parent my child a little bit different to make this transition and this adjustment a lot, you know, easier for me, because it doesn't have to be as hard as it is. It's going to come with its hardships regardless, because you're raising a human being to be as successful or just a decent human being in this world at the end of the day. So,
and I was going to add to that a lot of the times the parents don't see that the children are going to do what they see versus what they say, because you can tell a kid, hey, do X, Y, and Z, but like you said, if they see you doing something completely different, they're going to model what they see. And I think a lot of parents don't really understand that aspect. And like you said, when they come in, the child is the problem. The child is doing X, Y, Z, but they're not really understanding, hey, like, some of these behaviors they've learned from you, you've enabled, you know, for a long time. And so I think that's another thing, is like helping parents to model the effective boundaries, effective coping skills, modeling how to deal with stress effectively.
Yeah, the stress and the boundaries is a big one, because if you can't manage those two, your life can get out of control pretty easy, right? You know, and we've seen it, whether it be professionally or personally, and it just has that ability to do so, because stress is overwhelming. If your body's not ready for it, your mind's not ready for it, you know, it'll just kind of really take you, you know, kind of take you downhill. Now, one thing I do, so I have the evening intensive outpatient program where I work with youth ages 10 to 16, and in the intake session, I always ask every parent, whether it be just mom and dad or both, or one or the other, and the kid, I always ask the kid, what do you need from your parents? What is it that you need from your parents? We're hearing everything of them bringing you here, that they need you to change and need something. What do you need from them? And the parents look shocked sometimes, like, why are you, like, I'm bringing them here because I'm having trouble with them. But a lot of the times there's things that kids can't articulate and they can't say that, you know, they need from the parents. And when they hear it, more often than not, I get parents like, oh, okay, like I'm with it. I can get on board. But then I get some parents out there that are just like, well, I'm an adult. I can do X, Y, and Z. And again, it's like a matter of, you know, do you want to, you know, where's the compromise to kind of help them understand that, hey, this is how, you know, we operate. So I asked them, what do they need from the parents? And then overall, just kind of what the expectations are from both of them, you know, because I want them to both have expectations on each side so they can have, you know, success in this child's development, because at the end of the day, it will interrupt whatever may be going on if there's not, you know, that communication that's there to where both voices can be heard and not just the parent voice.
That's so true. And also, just in my practice, I asked, what was parenting like for the parents?
Okay.
Because a lot of times it's intergenerational patterns that are now being passed on of like screaming, yelling, unhealthy, maladaptive behaviors. And I asked the parent, how did you feel when that was done to you?
Okay.
A lot of the times they're able to articulate negative emotions. It didn't feel good, you know. And so I think that that's also important, is to get parents to recognize, hey, when these things were done to you, it did not feel good, you know. So how can we break some of these generational patterns? That way we're able to effectively parent and the child is able to be healthy.
Yeah, no, for sure. It just takes a little reflection. And if we don't do that reflection sometimes, I think in any aspect of our life, we kind of set ourselves up for failure, you know. So it just takes time to sit back and reflect and wonder, what can I do a little bit different? You know, how can I adjust things and to be able to move forward or make this look a little bit different? Even if you're doing a great job, I feel like as a parent, there's always something you can do a little bit better, because your child is always growing and there's different developmental stages that they go through. So you can't keep doing the same thing at 6 months, at 6 years old, and at 16 years old, and even in the 20s, you know. And you know, later on, you know, I'm gonna do an episode about that transition from you know, that child and parent relationship to that adult and child relationship, because sometimes that's kind of sticky waters, to where, you know, I hear my mom still treats me like I'm 15.
Yes.
And it's like I can never grow up, or I feel so bound by certain things that it's hard to transition from that. So, there's always growth that has to happen, like I said, in every aspect of life, but as a parent, because they are consistently growing, and that relationship has to kind of keep going.
Yeah, and I can even attest to that with my oldest son. He was an amazing kid, and not that he's not amazing now, but it's just some of the problems that I have with him now. I would have never imagined having those problems when he was a little kid. But you're right, it's a different type of parenting that takes place. The parenting that I used at 5 or 6, I can't use that parenting at 15, 16 years old.
He'd be out of control.
Yeah.
Because at 5 and 6, I mean, even with my daughter, I mean, there's a lot of yeses and a lot of, we do whatever. But then as they get older, like I said, those boundaries, those understandings, and, respect, those different things come into place. So if you think about, I'm going to ask you kind of 2 questions here on 2 ends of the spectrum. As a parent and a professional, what would you say the easiest thing about parenting is?
The easiest thing for me about parenting is loving on my kids. Just because I'm a very loving individual, and in childhood I didn't get those hugs, those kisses, just that physical touch that I needed. And that's funny because that's my kids' love language. It's physical touch. And so the easiest thing for me is to give them a hug, hold their hand. My 16-year-old still holds my hand. And so I find that very easy, and it's heartbreaking because I see a lot of older adults in my practice who have never received love from their parents, never received like physical touch, words of affirmation, and now it's hard for them to even give it to themselves. And so as a professional, I know that is important to figure out your kids' love language and to love on them the way that they need love. But I would just say that that's like the best part of parenting for me.
Oh, so that's amazing. Okay, I would agree. Touche there. What would you say the hardest thing is about parenting professionally and personally?
Oh my gosh. So professionally, the hardest thing about treating my parents is some of my parents are very defensive. A lot of them feel like I'm doing the best that I can. Why is this, like you said, why is this now coming back to me? What I need to be doing better. So it's harder to help them to see that, hey, we're just trying to grow. We're just trying to learn how to be the best version of ourselves here, how to be the best version of being a parent. And so I do sometimes meet that resistance and defensiveness. As a parent myself, look, my children be trying my patience now, but I have to be able to step back and emotionally regulate myself, because sometimes, like, even with all the training that we have as counselors, sometimes it's hard to put that into practice when you've had a long day and you've had a stressful day with clients, and now you got kids bombarding you at the door and dinner that needs to be fixed and all these tasks facing you. So sometimes I have to remember, like, Elexus, you have to emotionally regulate, take a step back. You got to go do coping skills. That way you can effectively deal with your kids.
Yes. Yeah. And as parents, like you said, kind of, ending off on that is having some effective coping skills as a parent. Whatever that may be, the coping skills and the self-care will help you be your best self for your child, for your family, and yourself across the board, because, if you can't pour out of an empty cup, right? So you got to fill yourself up like you're filling your kids. And some people may look at that as a little selfish. It's not, and sure, you can look at it that way, but it's more, selfless of, if I don't take care of myself, then I'm going to be irritable. I'm going to be, short and avoidant of certain things because I haven't taken care of myself and I don't know how to cope with this right now, but I'm a present parent. That counts, right? It does. But at the same time too, they feed off of our energy. So, the biggest thing as parent is remembering that too, is they feed off of our energy and kind of how we parent them, right? That's why it's called parenting. So, well, Alexis, we've kind of hit on some good points. If we've kind of talked about and went through almost the lifespan of, like, kind of, from early on until kids get older, of, parenting and how difficult that transition can be. And for any parents out there that feel like they're struggling, or parents that are about to be parents, it's going to be okay. It just takes a little education, making sure you have support around you. And in no way do we want to make it seem like, having a kid is just like hunky dory, right?
Yes.
It comes with its challenges just like everything else, but it matters where you are mentally, physically, and emotionally to be able to guide them and be there for them. Because that transition from, like I said, just being solo dolo to becoming a parent, it's a big one, but it's an amazing one too at the same time. I feel like, and I know a lot of people can agree with that too, of when you do start growing your family, and then again, in the back of some people's head, it's like, I want to be a better parent than my parent was, or I want to be just like my parents were. Some people have those parents, and there's a lot of things I take from my parents where I implement with my child. And though I think there's always things that you can find in your parents, but we're also raising children in a different time too. A lot of us grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s. These 2000 kids, these 2020 COVID kids, they're different. They are different. So it takes the transition is probably a lot different, now than it was 30 years ago. So.
And that's why I love this platform, because even these conversations like this about parenting, I feel like are so critical and so important, because you're right. Sometimes social media or TV makes it look like, oh, being a parent is just the most beautiful experience and it's so easy, and it is. It's a beautiful experience, but I feel like these conversations need to be had more about what it looks like on the other side of if you don't take care of yourself, if you're not focused on emotionally regulating. So I do think that like these conversations that we're having right now about parenting and transitions and the difficulty are so important.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback off something you said, because it made me think about something a client mentioned to me. So I have a couple that I'm working with, and the guy in the couple, they're trying to have a baby. They're working on that, and he mentioned to me that he had great parents. In the sense of like they took care of him, dad was a hard worker, and that's what he instilled in him, and mom made sure the house was taken care of, kind of those traditional things. But he made a statement to me that I've never heard before, but it made sense. He said, ultimately, as far as like my emotional maturity and how I deal with things, I want to do things so much different with my child, because when I was growing up, I was raised by TV shows. He said watching, the TV shows, the Full House, the Family Matters, whatever shows were on at that time, he feels like a lot of things he learned raised him because that wasn't discussed at home. Parents were just very to the point, you better have good grades and just kind of expectations. But the love and, like you said, the physical touch and the care, it was just never there. And he wants to do so different from his child. And I'm like, wow, I never thought about that. But when we do look back at TV shows back then, there was a lot of that, like Family Matters. The parents together, grandma in the house, like that support system was solid with Family Matters, right? And even growing up with, I used to love My Wife and Kids.
Yes,
they stuck it out and they went through things with their 3 kids, but there are a lot of things that I learned from those shows too as well. But again, like I said, hearing him say that, I'm like, wow. And so it does matter what we watch and kind of put in our brains too. But we need to raise our kids,
not let the tablets or the TVs raise them.
Right. So, all right, Alexis. Well, here at Ready Set Reset, we have a little game we like to play. It's called the stress test. So I hope you're ready. Everybody has to play it. It's kind of a requirement if you agree to come on the podcast. So it's called the stress test. And so as therapists, you never know what's going to be thrown at you, right? Clients come in and sit on the couch and they just like, before you know it, and we have to be quick on our feet sometimes. Quick and efficient at the same time. Not just throwing out, just whatever sticks to the wall. It's what makes us good therapists. So with the game, you will have 60 seconds to answer 10 questions. The time will start after I read the first question. If you can't come up with the answer, you don't know an answer, you can say skip. But guess what? We coming back to it if we still have time, okay? Just to test your abilities and see where you are, okay?
Ooh.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Spell the word anxiety.
ANXIETY.
Name a actor or actress.
Samuel Jackson.
If you were an animal, what would you be?
A polar bear. No, a bird. I'm sorry, bird.
Okay. What's your zodiac sign?
Leo.
Name something you hang up.
Clothes.
Name a vegetable.
Greens.
What?
Asparagus.
Asparagus. Okay. Name something that melts.
Ice.
Iced coffee or hot coffee?
Hot coffee.
Name a word that rhymes with change.
Skip.
How tall are you?
5'2".
Okay, 8 seconds. Name a word that rhymes with change. 3 seconds.
Fame.
Time. Fame does not rhyme with change.
Y'all, I promise I'm intelligent. I just needed a few more seconds.
You've got range, strange.
Oh my God.
Arrange.
You're right.
You've got a couple different options there. But I think overall it looks like you got 9 out of 10.
Yay.
Not bad. Pretty solid therapist there. I would say just kind of quick on your feet. So thanks for engaging in that. I know it kind of put a little pressure on it. How was that for you?
It was fun. It was really fun. Okay. I really enjoyed it.
What was the stress like on a scale from 1 to 10?
At first it started at a 10, and then as it went by, it decreased to like a 2. Probably.
Okay. Just kind of working through it, bringing yourself down. All right, Elexus. Well, I appreciate you sitting down with me today and being my guest and just kind of reflecting on some, things that we talked about when it comes to that transition to parenthood and becoming a parent. So, before we close, if there was anything that you could leave with our listeners or you want to leave and let them know, what would that be?
First of all, thank you again for having me. This has been so much fun. I think I just want to lead our listeners with knowing that parenting is not easy. There is a lot of transitions that come with parenting. However, you are capable and you are equipped to go through these changes with your kids and be effective parents. And so, like me and Ciara talked about, tap into social support, tap into even maybe you need therapy. Maybe you weren't raised in an environment where you learned how to regulate your emotions and now you're trying to teach your child something you don't know. Yeah. And so I say tap into therapy, tap into your resources, mommy groups, support. Me and Ciara have our own little friend group where as mommies, we get together, we go out, we escape the kids, the dads. It's amazing. And so I just want to leave that with y'all.
Okay. Hey, I appreciate that. So, hey, that's all for us today. Thanks for tuning in and taking time out of your day to listen in on mental health. And remember, sometimes all it takes is resetting your outlook. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ready, Set, Reset 1. Follow us on Instagram at ready_set_reset1 for mental health tips, laughs, and motivation. And if you know a student or have a child in the Fort Worth area that could use some additional support, visit our website at sunflowersigma.com to see if Reset IOP is right for them. You will find the resources discussed in today's podcast in the description area.